if this were to happen, the reunification that China wants so badly, what would it feel like to us to lose a quote unquote homeland, with this being a complicated issue since neither of us actually was born or raised in Taiwan, but our kind of like concept of cultural heritage is very deeply tied to that quote unquote country because
Well, it's even more confusing because technically China will still exist where all of that cultural heritage
so true.
originated from. I don't know. I mean, like, COVID really threw a fucking monkey wrench into the whole thing, but I always had this idea that I would be going back more frequently and trying to like reconnect with my family and like get to know Taiwan better, even though I know I'm never going to be like, people are always going to clock me as like not a Taiwanese person, but I don't know, it feels weird to know that there's a place where lots of happy things and memories are. Because I haven't visited a lot, but I have like lots of good memories of time with my family there. It's weird to know that that might be violated in a way, if that makes sense. And it feels really unsafe. Living in the United States, you've never had to face the fear that like anything would happen. It's always been so secure. So then to suddenly confront the fact that a place where your family lives and has built lots of memories and has experienced lots of love is suddenly going to be attacked. You don't necessarily know how, as we've discussed, it could be economic. They could actually be marching troops in. So I think it's really, really scary and it's really, really sad.
It's a really complicated issue, right? Because when we talk about heritage, something that we can't deny is that Taiwan as we know it, modern day Taiwan, it started from China. Like the people are literally like they were a
Yeah.
Chinese political party that like fled, and then all these people that now consider themselves Taiwanese at some point came from China. And so a lot of that cultural heritage, at least the like older heritage, or Chinese traditions and food and like all these, things that built up what Taiwan is today. But you cannot possibly deny that Taiwan has developed its own kind of thing since becoming its own nation. It's similar to our kind of previous debate about like, is the US more of a thing or is like the statehood identity more of
Mm-hmm.
a thing, right? Like, even if you are super Chinese nationalist and you want to claim Taiwan is just a province, this province's culture is its own thing. So I think that is like a standalone differentiator from Taiwan versus China, right? But the main thing is that if Taiwan were to actually be taken over, the government changes. So like as it stands today, even if you try to say Taiwan's not a country, it is run by a democratic process. It's not run by a communist regime. And so people are used to certain freedoms and privacy rights and other rights that people in mainland China do not currently have. So if Taiwan is taken over, fundamentally it will be quite different because the government will change hands. So it's different from us saying like, moving from California to New York or to Florida or whatever, because we're all still under the same president, we're still under the same government. It would be more like moving from Florida to Cuba. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's what scares me is like, I think the flavor of Taiwan in terms of like the way people act and like the modern culture that's been built up around Taiwan won't necessarily change because that's what's been built up in the last 80 years or whatever. But with the government changing, it just cannot run the same way. So that's what I'm fearful of. For example, I don't want to go to Hong Kong anytime soon since they got taken
Mm-hmm.
over by China,
Yeah.
even though I used to visit it and it felt like its own thing. I'm kind of scared to visit Hong Kong now, and I feel like that's how I would feel towards Taiwan.
The idea of losing the homeland is much more than just like the whole thing being torn apart by war and strife, but actually like the cultural identity of it is lost. And I think China taking over Taiwan will do exactly that. I mean, you just look at Hong Kong. They crushed like the vibrancy of what Hong Kong is because we've seen there's this kind of homogeneousness that they want to implement everywhere. So everyone is very similar. And I really, really don't think that they would just allow Taiwan to maintain the separation and the culture that it has because that's not the approach that they've taken anywhere else in China.
So we don't feel great about the idea of potentially losing a homeland, even if we were not born and raised there. It is still a big part of certainly our families and our families' histories, but also what we grew up with. We visited many times. It kind of shaped our identity crises that we constantly talk about, but our kind of foot in both worlds is shaped by that experience we have with Taiwan as well.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like it's something that you don't really think about, but like once you lose it, I think it can become like a really big hole for you.